Hello, dear chess friends. This is me, International Grandmaster Rashad Babaev, and I'm happy to introduce you my video course, which is dedicated to Endgame and important parts of it. As we know, many chess players spend a lot of time to improve their opening and middle game understanding. However, I think we should not forget importance of Endgame. As third world champion Jose Raul Capablanca said, that to improve at chess, you should in the first instance study the endgame. I think it means a lot, right? In my opinion, I would divide endgames to two groups, theoretical and practical. Theoretical part of endgame and practical part of endgame. The first one, which is a theoretical, is something you can learn from chess material, from endgame books, and the only thing you need to do is be patient because we have a lot of theoretical positions in the endgame, and just remember them and apply them into the games you play. But when it comes to practical part, usually there we're having more difficulties, and even strong grandmasters are having hard time to find good plans and good ideas in those practical positions. But don't worry, I did not want to scare you. In this video course, we will try to systemize important ideas, important patterns, common ideas we can use in those practical endgame positions. And I believe this material will definitely help you to understand practical positions better. Let me now go ahead and introduce you our topics we will learn in this video course. The first topic we will learn will be about general principles of playing endgame positions. The second topic of our video course will be about transition to the endgames. Third, dynamic sacrifices. Fourth, heavy pieces endgames. 5, creating fast pawn. 6, theory in action. Now, I would like to start with first topic, which is general principles. And in this topic, we have two separate lessons. The first one, active king. The second one, pass pawns. I think these two elements are important elements of playing any endgame position. As most of us know, in the beginning or in the middle game, we try to hide our kings in order to make sure that king is safe and is not being attacked. But when it comes to endgame, you do not need to hide your king anymore. You can simply bring your king to the game. Of course, it will depend where you bring your king, because everything will depend on specific position you have, and every position is different than other. But usually we try to bring king towards the center. Right from the center, your king can go to any side of the board. To the king side, to the queen side, forward, backward, anywhere you would like to go. Let me show you the first position we see here. This is really easy position where I would like to show you why king activity is so important in chess. So here, in this situation, white has extra knight on the board. I think this position is not difficult to win for any chess player, but the strategy we use here is very interesting. White will not be able to win this game if they don't bring king to the game. Very interesting. You have extra knight, but if you do not use your king in the endgame, even with positions where you have extra knight, will be very, very difficult to win. So what white can do here, they bring king immediately. No need to delay this kind of ideas. Of course, white could play so many other moves and eventually bring the king over, but why not to go for that immediately? So white brings, by the way, pay attention please, black also brings king. Without king will be very difficult to defend their position. And now kings are active, white king is more active. That means we will be able to use the power of the king to drive away black king and win the game later. For example, the game can go like this: f5 check, king d4. Again, I'm not going to try to analyze this position that deep. It's just an example why king activity is important. I'm sure white could play king f4 and win the game there. This is just one of the lines. h6, black is pretty much out of any normal moves. They're trying to develop pawns a little. White prevents that idea. g6, g3, and as you know, in these kind of positions, black is usually finds himself in Zugzwang. Zugzwang is a position where you are out of normal moves. And here I would like to show you one really interesting and very, very beautiful line here after king h5, f4. Of course, we're not taking on f5. If you do so, it will be stalemate. So we play f4. Now, the only move black has is en passant, and look how beautiful checkmate position we get here. Again, it's not supposed to be only this exact line, but the ideas I showed you here are very interesting. But the most important is moving your king into the game. This is a very simple position. I would like to start with this first. Now I'm going to next. Next game was played between two grandmasters. White is Magnus Carlsen, black is Petr Svidler. Game was played in 2009 in Moscow. We can start from the beginning. We will try not to make big pauses here, but I can still give you some ideas of what's happening. This is a pretty rare variation of Sicilian with b3 fianchetto bishop to queenside, but Magnus is very well known for his and opening repertoire. Is usually not following main lines and tries to get just simple positions where he can outplay his opponents. And this game is one of them. So then he develops c takes d, knight d4, and we're pretty much getting like classical position where black has isolated pawn and white has good development. Black has active piece game in the center. Pretty classical ideas here. Magnus takes knight c6. This is another famous transition of the pawn structure from isolated. Now we get c6 d5 pawns, 2 pawns. Black center feels better now, but white attacks it more now with c4, c takes d, and isolated pawn comes back, c takes d. Let's see how Magnus develops. Black also develops pieces to, I would say, good position. And critical moment of the game, Svidler decides to push pawn forward, get 2 tempts. 2 tempts, looks very aggressive, opens up the pieces. And now it's white's move. Magnus plays bishop f6, which is pretty much forcing black to determine position and go into the endgame. Otherwise, they lose pawn. If they take queen f6 with the queen, we take pawn on d3 with the queen. Taking with g-pawn, of course, is not even good. Opens the king. D takes e is pretty much only move. Bishop d8. Takes queen. Rook d1. Now bishop f2. Bishop should be given back. Otherwise, black will play game down a pawn after rook d8, rook c5. White has extra pawn and game is lost. That's why here bishop f2 was played, rook c1, and rook d8. I think this is the position for estimation because we transferred game into the endgame, and it would be good to determine plans and ideas and just in general what's going on here. So you can pause the video, think of this position, and come up with some kind of interesting plans for white. But how do I estimate position? White is better. White is better because their king will be more active than black king. We can compare kings. White king is close to the center, close to the area where most of the fight is going on. In the future, white king can easily help us to defend ourselves against black pass pawns. Most likely black will try to realize pawn majority on the king side and come up with pass pawn there. So our king will be very useful. In case if we need, we can see white king going to the queen side, attacking pawn on a6. For example, if we trade rooks, we go into bishop's endgame, then king can be very helpful to go to that side of the board. So feels like white king will be more active than black king. If we look at the pawn structure, we can see the white pawn structure is better, especially with this a6 isolated pawn. So all these things determine advantage for white, and that's why Magnus wins the game. Let's see what happened in the game. Immediate king e3, g5 was played by Svidler. Very interesting move. I personally like g5 move. Opens the king, helps them to advance pawn chain. Again, possibly get pass pawn in the future, which is not easy, but that's pretty much only counter game. But the only concern I have about g5, this pawn will be under attack at some point, and we will see from the next moves. What else black can do instead of g5? Maybe they could start with immediate f5, but then bishop on e6 and pawn on e6 are hanging, and in one move we can attack them. Rook c6, and now h4. It's also a good move, good endgame idea to remember, prevents black from advancing pawns. And I think bishop e2. After bishop e2, we are just going for that a pawn and winning the pawn. After which we have big and decisive advantage. So let's go back to the game. Black played g5, rook c5. Magnus is attacking the pawn. Good move, but I also think that Magnus could play immediate rook c6, attacking the pawn. Now, bishop c8, g3. Idea of g3 to play bishop e2 next move, which I don't want to do right now. Bishop e2, it runs into bishop b7. Then we have to move rook. He takes here. I believe white is still leading in the game, but now material is equal, number one, and number two, f pawn can also be dangerous. That's why we better keep pawn g3 and then bishop e2. The next move, we're just winning the pawn. As you can see, if they play a5, after rook c5, we still have fork and winning the pawn. That's why I believe Magnus could play rook c6, but probably rook c5 is also fine. Bishop b7, rook b8, bishop a6, rook a8, and now Magnus defends the bishop. He got the pawn, A and B pawns, connected pass pawns, easy to push them together forward. But black is struggling because king is not in the game. King cannot support any pass pawns, and they're down a pawn. So this determines big advantage for white. Rook d6, bishop g2, and we can see now what happened in the game. H8, f4, king d4. Again, I want to bring it to your attention how active king on d4. It can go anywhere you wish. It can support your pawns. It can defend opponent's pass pawns. And rook takes g5, rook d5. This was another nice transition into bishop's endgame. Right now, we have 3 pawns against the bishop, but all of them passed. And bishop by itself cannot really defend all of them and block all of them. So what we do, we push queenside pawns, and at right moment, we use the king pawn in order to deflect one of the black pieces. So one of them should be busy with h pawn, and now b5, a6 could be played, but he decided to play king c5 here. b6 makes b pawn protected passed, and now he can easily go to the king's side with the king. And black resigned here. Game is pretty simple. We just go to g5, push pawn. Eventually black will need to give up bishop for the pawn, and then we come back to c7 to help b pawn to go to queen. Black can never capture a pawn because b pawn is just simply going to queen. Very interesting game played by world champion Magnus Carlsen, and in this game we could simply see how active white king on d4, and white king was dominating over his opponent black king, who was out of the game and was not participating in the game. Now we can go to our next example. Next game we have was played between two grandmasters, Plaskett for white and Yusupov for black. Very interesting game. Let's start from the first moves again to see what happened. Pretty interesting line, but usually this kind of positions are pretty equal, I would say, quiet. So if you like positional chess, where you can systematically develop your position with less tactics, less complex positions, this is one of those openings you can try to play with white. Bishop b5, knight d7. Knight d7 is being played just to unpin the knight because of knight e5 ideas at some point. Putting more pressure, castle. Let's come to that position where they got into endgame. As you can see, they're still fighting for this open C line. Seems like white wins the fight. C1, bishop b5, queen b3, knight b3. And now, after all these exchanges, we are here in endgame position. And I would like to discuss this endgame to determine what's happening here, to estimate it. Let's start with the king's positions because our topic is about king's positions here. I think it's obviously better for black because black king is close to the center, close to the area where he can always attack, be aggressive, which we cannot say about white king. As you can see, white king is just far away from the center, and it's actually pretty difficult to find a path for this king to come to a game. As you can see, f1 square is blocked by the bishop, so it means white will need to spend additional time to open way for the king to come to the center. Most likely they need to move knight from f3, then play f3, king f2, king e1, king d1, and of course it's all time, and as we know, time is important. That's why this position is better for black. Black king is more active than white king, and let's see how Grandmaster Yusupov realizes this active king. f3. By the way, you can make a pause here, think a little bit how you can take advantage of active black king on d6. King c6, bishop a4, king b5. So what black is doing, black king is coming from b5, b4, a3, and trying to attack a2 pawn. White could bring king over, and they are going all the way to b1. But again, if we compare black king to white king, it's obvious who is better here. Bishop b5, knight b6. So I think now what black is trying to do, they're trying to activate knight, bring knight to game. With these cramped pieces, white will definitely run out of moves, and at some point they will need to start playing useless moves or give up some material. It's very difficult to advance white position. Pieces are pretty much need to stay on the first rank to defend a2. This knight is not even going anywhere. I mean, he tried king c2, but For example, if you move d knight, then black knight comes to c4 and there's a problem with e3 pawn. That's why white is waiting so far. Still knight c4 attacking e3 and knight f1. In case if they take, I think we can take with the bishop attacking a2, and king b1 should be played. And I think right now white is out of any moves. Knight is now moving. You can see don't have b3, d3, e2 squares. So seems like only king will be moving to a1 and b1. So black can definitely improve game, play all the moves they like. I think bishop f1 is interesting. After g3, bishop g2, we can force all the pawns to be on white. And now maybe give check, and now maybe just bishop c2, because knight e2, bishop d3, knight c3, bishop c4. I'm still attacking this pawn. King b1, a5, king a1, I think a4, again king b1. Now we can give him check, king a1 and king b4. Seems like black should be winning here. King b2 runs into a3 move. They still need to move knight somewhere. For example, knight d1, and now I think we can do bishop e2, force this knight here, and after a3 we win the game. Or if black plays knight f2, we can do king c3. And after that, king d2, winning the pawn. So very passive position for white. Let's go back to our game. See what happened in the game, how white tried to defend position after these moves. Knight c4, knight f1, knight b2. Attacking knight again, knight g3 was played. Knight g3, most likely to knight d2. If they play knight d2, black can give them check. And now knight d1, e3 pawn is hanging, and I believe this is very bad position. Knight c3 and bishop c2. Seems like knights are trapped. They don't have any good squares to go to. Knight g3 was played, e4, and what's happening now, we're getting pieces back to knight went back to a4, bishop f1, and white needs to give up the pawn. To g3 we have bishop g2. It's really difficult to suggest how to hold white position. The game is very cramped. They need to hold many weaknesses, a2, g2, the knight is jumping, now d4 became vulnerable. So black is just playing between these weaknesses and definitely winning one of them and then the game. And now with extra pawn, it's not that difficult to win this position. We can just see what happened in the game. Another pawn is coming. Look, even here is not letting him to develop knight, pushing him back to f2 and then capturing on a3. And white resigned in this position. So this was another interesting game was played between two grandmasters. We saw that active king. I think this is the critical moment to understand. Black had much better king than white, and that's why result of it, they won the game. One more example I would like to show you about active king.